I'm gonna wait for you to clear your mouth real quick. Make sure you didn't catch you. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Dungeons and Degrees. My name's Adrian.
And I'm Alex.
And today we have a special guest. Special guest, introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Lucia Versprilly, or otherwise known as Seersword all over the internet, and I'm here to talk about my TTRPG experiences and things.
Hopefully.
Last episode we kind of got off the rails.
Every episode we get off the rails.
Yeah.
I can talk about anything for a long extended period of time, so wherever we go.
Awesome. I was just scrolling through TikTok, and then I found the Islands of Sina Una, just kind of one of these, you talking about it, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I want to see, what went into it and everything, and I was just like, heck yeah, we need more representation in our TTRPGs.
Absolutely.
Tell me about how it came to be, the Islands of Sina Una. Or actually, more specifically first, for people who don't know, tell us about the book.
So, the Islands of Sina Una, if you don't know, it's a pre-colonial Philippines-inspired 5e supplement. So there is a entire world setting in there based off of pre-colonial Philippines, and there is player options, so races, classes, 2 brand new classes that we made specifically for the book, and then there's I think 50 plus monster compendium at the back, because obviously it's Filipino mythos, and you can't have Filipino mythos without all of the very, very scary stories that at least my Lola used to tell me about. So there's that in there as well. New equipment, feats, backgrounds, and there's an appendix in the back. So if you want to know where it all actually came from historically and want to do your own research into it, there's a big resource in the back of the book for that as well. So I'm pretty proud of it.
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Being able to kind of circle back to the source of where things came from as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was really important for us to, because most of the sources that we had to pull from are super inaccessible for people, especially if you're not in the Philippines. So I actually tell people all the time that if they want to learn about Filipino mythos at all, the Islands of Sina Una is one of the most affordable and most accessible ways to do it. And of course, the whole team is Filipino as well. So you're also supporting a Filipino made by, created for, but also, we want to share with everybody. But I'm really proud of the team.
Well, yeah, I mean, that must be a lot of fun too, being able to come up with stories and come up with things within the 5e construct, but also hearken to stories your family has told you. I love that. I think that's super fun, especially thinking about how cultures even are created through storytelling and being able to then actually put that in writing and then share it with people who had no experience at all. That's super cool.
Yeah, and especially because a lot of Filipino mythos is based off of oral tradition. So a lot of what we were pulling from, it's very storytelling driven of, this is how we actually kept a record of everything before colonization. So for us, it was very much that was really important to kind of carry on. And it lends itself really well to the 5e experience of everybody sitting around a table and telling a story together.
More modern storytelling now, especially since we've kind of had to interact vocally through internet, and for a time period when Corona was kind of high, where these stories can be shared more readily. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
What is your favorite monster from what you've written down?
Ooh. I love so many of them. But I think personally, the merfolk that we have in the book are really high up there, just because like I was a young girl once. I was obsessed with mermaids. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, mermaids are cool, but like sirens are even cooler. And we kind of have like our own versions of those in Filipino mythos. So out of, I think there's about 4 different merfolk. I would say probably the Magindara is my favorite. Their design is based off of like lionfish, which are, if you don't know, like the menace of the sea. So Magindara are kind of like a translation of that in like a mermaid. And then obviously like the Aswang, all of the Aswang are super cool. If you're familiar with Filipino mythology at all, the Aswang is kind of like, those are the top tier. Everybody knows those. Everybody's been warned about those when you go out at night. So all of the Aswang are super cool too.
Oh, hell yeah. That's amazing.
I love that about mythology and like seeing the cross pollination or, you know, whatever of different, especially like water creatures, because they're all about the same, but they all have their differences between what the culture predominantly thinks is what femininity tends to be, I guess.
Yeah. It's very it was very cool to kind of go back to like the roots of mermaids, especially in the Philippines, because eventually colonization kind of lended themselves to the Spanish kind of imposing their own ideas of mermaids, whereas like pre-colonial Philippines kind of didn't have the same ideals around femininity. And so a lot of the merfolk they're drawn upon in kind of this like feminine way, but they're not necessarily all considered like femme fatales, if that makes sense. So it's really cool to kind of like translate that part of the culture as well in way of monsters, because you know it's all like weirdly a commentary on their society and their communities and how they viewed certain things. So I love a mermaid.
How did you all bring a team together? Like, how was like, oh, this would be a great idea? How did it start?
I really can't take a lot of credit for that. I kind of put the word out that I wanted to do. It actually started off as just a monster compendium. I just wanted to gather a bunch of the monsters, put them into one, have Filipino artists and writers work on it. And then as it kind of snowballed out of control, it expanded into this like larger thing. But the team actually started, I was just on Twitter, honestly, and I was looking for Filipino writers and artists to just support, because I had never really been open about the fact that I was Filipino online. And so I was like, you know what? I think it was during AAPI month, and I was like seeing everybody talk about their culture and their heritage, and I was like, oh man, like I should get in on that. And so I put out a call, and I was looking for people, and then I think people kind of assumed that I was making content as well. So I kind of felt like, well, maybe I'll gather everybody and we can see about working on something. And what ended up happening was I would bring on one person and they would say, oh, that's not really my area of expertise. I can bring on a friend though. And then that friend would know another person. And then, you know, it was kind of the same way with artists as well. I was like, hey, can you do like an environment? And they would be like, I'm more of like a people person. And then they would say, but I know a friend who I go to school with who's, you know, trying to build their portfolio. And so it was just kind of like, it was kind of like already an established community that I just kind of put a big rope around and tied everybody up into one spot, kind of like corralling them in. So it was cool. It was kind of like, oh, I know a friend, I know a guy, I know a person or whatever. And then I became their lead director. So
How many people are working on the compendium?
I think at least 20 around 20 different writers and at least like 30 different artists. And then we also had editors and researchers. So I think like after the fact, there's been at least like 60 people involved with this book.
That just shows you that there's like a real need. There's a real
absolutely
want.
Yeah, and it was kind of wild too, because having all of these Filipino creatives on it, I was like, wow, like this is a lot for just one book. And I was looking for representation. I was looking for community within the community, and being on this book and being able to kind of congregate with everybody, it was very much like there's more like Filipinos in the space than I thought there was. And I think that's also something that we're kind of trying to push for, is like, it's probably the same with any heritage, with any culture. If you're looking for whoever you are as well, they're probably out there.
Just make a book about it. It's fine.
Yeah,
come to you.
It's a super simple process. Just make a book.
Just pull together all of your grandma's stories and then go from there. It'll be fine.
How long did it take together, everybody? Like you said, like, oh, we met one person, then the next person, and then just like a conga line of individuals were being contacted.
Yeah, it actually wasn't too long of a process to find everybody. Because like I said, I think a lot of people, as well as me, were kind of like looking for that community and looking for other people in the space. So once it was out there that I was leading this project and other people were getting involved, then it was like everybody wanted to be involved and I wanted everybody to be involved. So it really wasn't too long of a process for everybody to know and to be like, hey, like, get me in there.
I want a piece of this. I want to show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did. I mean, the whole team like really did some of the best work, I think. And I know I'm probably biased, but like in the TTRPG space, I really do feel like this was such a above the standard of what I was expecting from like any TTRPG content. Just so immaculate. I'm so in love with my team.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an immediate labor of love. Like, yeah, of course.
I think for a lot of us, it was very personal, because reading about the colonization of your own country can be so traumatic to have to go through and learn, all of these things that you grow up and you have no idea. And so I think that for a lot of us, like, it was a bonding experience because we were all going through it at the same time. And for the people who were teaching us, especially me, because, I don't know Tagalog. I wasn't born in the Philippines. So there's kind of that disconnect of being American Filipino and being like in the country Filipino. Yeah. But everybody was super patient, super kind, and just like really willing to learn and to teach, because we knew that was also part of the mantle that we had to take up, being a culturally inspired book. So yeah.
How did you practice? Like, here's my assumption, is that you're doing this uncovering, you're learning about colonizing in your ancestral line, which is traumatic for, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. What did you do to practice any sort of self-care? Like, how did you get through it? Because I'm sure one person is doing the same thing, right?
Right.
What did you do? What did you find that helped you?
I think for a lot of it is community and having the team there, and that being the way that I was going through it. I think, I've talked about the book and how like it was traumatic to go through those things, but also I think the way that we did it was one of the best ways to be able to then recover, because it was kind of like, dang, like this really sucks, but at least we're preserving it by doing what we're doing. So having the team there and being able to sort of like touch base and be like, I'm just like, I'm really struggling with all of this stuff that we would have otherwise lost, or, and being able to kind of look at that other person and say, like, it is hard, and understandably, like, thinking about all the terrible things that happened to your ancestors is tremendously heartbreaking, but at least you are honoring them by making this book and doing it as respectfully as you can. And that was something that, for me, like personally, I also had to kind of face when it came to like my own Lola and my mother, of, sharing with them like how it hurts, and how it's like, oh, everybody in America celebrates Magellan, and like the rest of the team is like, man, that guy sucks. But it was kind of also like like an icebreaker, I guess, like, so to speak, of kind of, telling my Lola all these things that happened, and for her to sort of see that as an avenue to also open up about the struggles of being Filipino, of immigrating to the States, of being married to an American man. Like, all of those things kind of like unfolded because I started doing this, which otherwise I don't think I would have ever really had the opportunity to talk to her about those things. So it was like, it was kind of like a, like the wound is there, but everybody is cleaning it. And, it's going to hurt, like the alcohol or the disinfectant is going to hurt, but then afterwards, you're going to stitch it up and it's going to heal. So that was another thing.
Through the power of teamwork.
Yes. As Care Bears as it sounds.
I think how you said it and how you talked about it, like kind of going through the past and talking about it and just opening up with your kind of older relatives, it shows that like it takes something to finally open up with those individuals, because when you're young, they see you as like, oh, I don't want to show these troubles or anything or share this because they're young, they're kids, they can do this. But like when you get older, you start sharing the troubles that have been with you, and they kind of open up their experience. And I've slowly but surely learned that with my own family, because they're like, I told my mom, like, it's hard for me to open up because I don't know, because you've never shown that kind of like vulnerability. She's like, well, I don't think you should have had to deal with that. I'm like, that's true, but like, now that we're here at this stage of life, I think we can and we should. So sharing in these experiences, these ideas, and these feelings kind of opens up that avenue with those relatives.
Yeah, and I think for like the Islands of Sina Una, I get people messaging me and saying, my parents or my grandparents or my aunts or my aunties or, whoever in their family who's Filipino especially, they're like, yeah, I've never really we've never really shared that interest of, TTRPG, or I've been Filipino my whole life, but like this book makes me feel Filipino. And, they tell me I share it with my people in my family when we go to dinner. And it's kind of one of those things of like, again, it's like an icebreaker. And for me too, like my great aunt on my mom's side, who's Filipino, I was telling her that I was doing this, and she talked to me at length about how they would make flour in the province in the Philippines, or, how they would dry out their rice. And I was like, and I asked her, I was like, why haven't you ever really talked about it? Like, I've grown up with you my whole life. And she was like, because when you get to America and you are trying to fit in, remembering all that stuff makes you it others you from the crowd, from, you know, and she was like, and I never wanted my kids or anybody else's kids to know kind of what it was like to live in that other country, because we just wanted you to be American. We wanted you to feel like you belonged here. And that's like another sort of thing about the book, and like having to open up and talk about it, is not only are you facing like the struggles of colonization and trying to preserve like indigenous culture and respect them, but you're also kind of like making this book while we're in America versus, you know, a team all coming from the Philippines. It's kind of one of those things where it's almost like you have to justify it to some people of like, well, you're already Filipino. Why are you making a book about being Filipino? And it's like, because I want to, you know, it's mine to do with what I want. So that's another thing of when people come to me about doing their own Sina Una, but with their own culture, I kind of have to, you know, softly place them in the river of like, it's going to be a lot, and you're going to have to prepare yourself and make sure that you have a support system that is prepared with you, so that you can kind of, you know, like I said, like apply that bandage and have it and know that it's going to heal after.
And especially because that's not something that's openly talked about, not only within families, but even in the larger, you know, educational sphere. That's not something that you are going to assume that you're going to learn when you go to school. And so your family doesn't want to talk about it. Your education doesn't want to talk about it. They just want to focus on a different part of history. And so being brave and taking that first step and saying, hey, like let's look at this. Let's talk about it. I want to celebrate my culture. I want it to be seen by others. Like, I have a 0% Filipino blood. 0. When I tell you 0, I mean 0. And I am so excited because of the possibility of all of the things that, you know, other cultures can bring. Like, that sounds like magic, and it only sounds like it's gonna make my life better, right? Does that,
Yeah,
without
absolutely.
sounding terrible, taking I'm not gonna say it like that.
What are you gonna say, Alex? Huh? Tell me what you really mean.
No, that's not what I meant to say, but I will finish
I
my
get where you're
sentence.
going, okay?
Yeah, me taking from your culture is only gonna make my experience on this earth so much better, but I never have to live in, so it's just like a paradise. I hate that.
But I think that's a fair thing that, you know, a lot of people have been like, can I play this if I'm not Filipino? And I'm like, yes, please play it. Like, and buy the book, because, you know, you supporting it only means that we are opening doors for everybody. And, you know, I've played games since I was like 16. And I can't tell you the amount of times where we're in a game and something is mentioned or referenced from like Greek mythology or Norse mythology. Mm-hmm. And immediately in my head, I put it together of what's happening or what's coming up, because I'm like, everybody's heard of Baba Yaga. Everybody's heard of Zeus. We all know these stories, right? So I think that having kind of a wider view, it's like, I do want people who aren't Filipino to pull from it, because you're like expanding your world, you're making it more fun. And like the idea that people can pull so like blasé just materials from Norse mythology or Greek mythology and, you know, not really care about the history behind it. It's like, to an extent, I wish that people would look at Filipino mythology that way, or any mythology that way, because then it's like, it doesn't feel like you're walking on eggshells around it. It's like, we want to just be a part of the table and be a part of the conversation, a part of the game. We don't need you to, you know, handle it like a newborn baby and, and be like, oh no, like I can't mess it up or whatever. You know, it's a game. As long as you're not being like just nasty about it, then like, yeah, pull from it, use it, or don't use all of it, use some of it, use a little bit of it, or whatever you want to do. It's there to enjoy.
You're pulling from a fun aspect of this thing. It's not trying to be like, you know, of course everything's not going to be one-to-one, but because we have to translate into D&D, it's like, yeah, that shouldn't be happening in the mythology. But no, one person can be pulling from aspects to inspire themselves because you just want to get that information out there, right? You want to have it available for others. But I know when you said like, you know, put upon like an all Filipino team, I'm like, what other kind of culture can we, you know, is there for that? Like we've seen some Greek books on Wizards of the Coast, but like what other cultures can we take from? And I just think that's an
can
amazing
we take
step.
from is not the probably right phrase.
True. I'm saying like in your own game to have, you know, enjoy the story, to learn about the story, to, you know, you see a character like a Rumpelstiltskin and you're like, I know what the ending is, you know? So like, what are these stories I don't know about? So exactly what Lucia said.
Yeah, and there's so many. I know for me personally, like when I'm going to be so honest, when Raya came out, I didn't like it. It's to me it feels kind of like a shallow way of representing the entirety of Southeast Asia. I'm like, I know that y'all don't confuse Indonesia with the Philippines. I know you don't. So to kind of like mesh them all together is one thing. But in any case, seeing things like, not to date this episode or anything, but right now Miss Marvel is coming out, and I love it. Like I'm not South Asian, obviously. I'm Filipino. But a lot of the like traditions and the story and the family dynamics and the way that a lot of the characters talk about being South Asian, but not South Asian enough, but also not being white enough or whatever it is, the way that the main character kind of interacts with her family, like all of those things are so refreshing and like just they feel so nice to finally see kind of becoming part of like the mainstream elements and like mainstream storytelling ideals. And I think it makes it so much more interesting because I feel like so many things can get so formulaic, and especially when it comes to D&D games, because it's very much like you go to a dungeon and you go to a dragon and it's like, okay, the namesake is there. We get it. So like I really want to see other things being put in. That's why when they announced like the Radiant Citadel, I like bawled my eyes out for a couple hours because I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cool to see like, you know, Wizards of the Coast doing something led by an all POC team. Like, thank you, finally.
How did you get into the TTRPG space? What started you on this kind of journey of games and having fun with it?
I think unlike a lot of other POC women in the space, I kind of got into gaming out of spite.
Yes, we live out of spite on this podcast.
My boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, so he's not the villain in the story. I want to make it clear every time I tell this story. Everybody's like, I hope you dumped him. He actually invited me to game where they needed another player. But, you know, it was kind of like, well, we don't know if we should invite Lucia because, like, you guys are dating and, like, she's a girl. She's never played before and yada, 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 right? And so I was like, well, then, like, whatever. I don't want to be a part of that game anyway. And then a friend of mine who was also in that game and had kind of left it because of just creative differences, friends falling out, etc., was like, hey, I want to start my own group. Would you like to play? And I, in my spiteful little mind, said, you know, I don't know how good of a player I would be, but I think I would be really good at dungeon mastering. Which may have been like a, you know, beginning of the tarot journey, you pull the Fool card. But, you know, I was ready for it. So I ended up, I learned the whole system in like the weekend. I watched Critical Role and DMing videos, and that's kind of how I jumped in. And then also I had played a really small game with my uncle like a couple years ago before that. So I was like, I know that I would like it. But then I think when when they were like, you can't play with us, I was like, well, then you can't play with me. And I started my own thing. So that's how I started gaming. And then I had been playing for a while, and then I eventually was like, oh, I would really like a set of custom dice. And nobody was really like making what I wanted. So I started making dice. That was how I kind of like got into the industry side, because I was making a little bit of money. You know, it's like, well, now you're a business. But then after that, you know, I was kind of in the community because of making dice. And then I put out this thing about being Filipino and looking for Filipino writers and artists. And then that kind of got me into that side of things. So it was kind of like a one domino knocked over the entire set.
She just likes to say, I see a need, I will fill it.
Exactly.
It's me. First time player, no. First time DM, yes.
Yeah, you know, whether it was confidence or just blind sort of, I'm going to go in and conquer it anyway. I was being the colonizer.
No. The shoe is on the other foot. Beware. Awesome. What was your first character? Or, well, you were the DM first, right?
Yes.
All right. So what was that story look like? Was it a module? Did you just jump into it like, I'm going to create everything on my own? I just like straight, just going for it. The whole enchilada.
I mean, would you believe that I didn't know modules existed at the time?
I mean, I believe you.
Would not surprise.
So, I think like many a young girl, I had OCs and like a whole world that only existed in my brain. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I'm never gonna write this in book form. So I was like, you know what? I'll just use all of this and put it in my game. So yeah, I started the thing from scratch too. And like looking back on it, I was like, why did I do that? This is your first time DMing and you were just like, I'm not going to make it easy on myself at all.
I don't want to say that someone's perpetuating like Asian and Pacific Islander like stereotypes, but girl, what? She said, what? No, I've got this imagination in a weekend. Fuck you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, you know, whether it was my need to achieve Asian side or my constantly argumentative with my American father side, who was like, I'm never going to let a man tell me what I can or can't do. That was sort of my my diving plank into the deep end.
Hell yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know what? Whatever you do, you send me a message. I'm supporting it 110%. Like, whatever I can do. Because yes, we're here for that.
I appreciate the support from the outside.
Strangers on the internet.
I'll do it. Just finding things on TikTok or Twitter or wherever, just bringing them on, talking and having a good time.
Absolutely.
Do you have...
Oh.
Go ahead. Oh.
No, go, because I was going to get a Kickstarter rant again.
Do you have a next project in mind, or what do you have on your scope?
I have a couple of things happening that I'm not able to talk about them phase yet.
Yeah. We get a lot of... Okay, cool.
We love that.
Yeah. I feel like that's every person I know in the TTRPG community. I will say though that if I were to do another project, I would love to work with my team again that I worked with for Sina Una. So if anything were to come up in the future, most likely it would be with them. And that's all I'll say.
Yeah. If and maybe.
The wink,
so
wink, nudge,
wink,
nudge.
wink, nudge. Legally not binding.
Yeah. Just what I can say.
If there was something, it might be something.
Absolutely love it. I feel like once you're in that creative field, it's like there's always the next project. It's like, I got this idea now, and this idea, and it just starts exploding once you start putting your feet in.
I feel like once you do the first one, then you're like, why did I do it like that? Now I want to redo it so I can do it the right way. So I know that for me, there's like a lot of things where I'm like, oh man, like I really missed a chance to do this, or I should have, like, or I look back at it and I'm like, I left out that one thing. So in future, I know a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. It's always going to be kind of this learning process, especially when you jump into these kinds of like, what's good, what's not for the industry and things. Like, what are you looking for? What can we look out for? Like, I started one podcast and now I'm like, I'm going to do another one. And I'm going to do another one. Like, I just want to talk to all these people. I'm like, why did I pigeonhole myself into just Dungeons and Dragons? Doesn't matter. We're just gonna go all TTRPG, all fun. Like that's how it happens. You start breaking down like what we're supposed to be until they be like, this is what I want to do.
Until eventually it's just a bunch of people talking about whatever. But I love that though. I think that in the industry, like what makes it, especially for TTRPG, what makes it so interesting is like all of these people who are in it their other job is like they're in a completely different field, or they have like completely different experience. Some people that I know in the space, they're like, yeah, this is like my side thing, and then my main thing is like I work on Hollywood movies, and I'm like, what? So, it's a box, but like you can get out of the box sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's really fun about playing Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, because you're right that on my day job, I teach things. Today it's swimming lessons. During the school year, it's school. Like, but like at the end of the day, I'm logging on and playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, and like that's a shared experience. And because we have all those other outside experiences, it only betters the game. And then, you know, especially with the move in the industry to start adding everybody's cultural sides of it, it's only making the game richer and more fun to play. And so, you know, I think if we were all doing Dungeons and Dragons and nothing but Dungeons and Dragons, that would be awful. It would be boring.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you know, that's like whenever there's like a release that Wizards of the Coast does, and everybody's like, where's this thing from 30 years ago? I just want to be like, they're not dead. Doing it. Yeah, like, it's in the past, 30 years ago. That's where it is.
You're not playing Dungeons and Dragons right.
Yeah,
we're playing this game, not that game. If you want to play that game, go back in time.
Yeah, like, if that's what you want and you know that it's already out there, then just go use that. But, like, you know, I want new stuff. Give me different perspectives.
Hell yeah.
I don't know what a spelljammer is. I don't need to ask anymore, okay?
It's not relevant.
I want to see just so many floods of books. There's already so many floods of books, but I want to see them like hardcover, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of good projects coming out that
you obviously can't talk about.
Well, I know some of the ones that like have been released. I think the other thing too is like so many people are so attached and care so much about D&D that
You're talking about different projects that are coming out.
Yes. Yeah, I think that so many like cultural projects are coming out, but they're not directly 5e, they're not directly D&D, they're their own standalone TTRPGs. And I think people miss out on them because, like, you know, they're so connected to the D&D system, which is fine. I love D&D. That's my main, you know, that's my main game. But I also think that there's some things as far as like some storytelling goes that it doesn't do as well as other systems. And same with the community, like talking only about D&D all the time. It's like, but there's other TTRPGs that are like doing the cultural thing. And if we just like expanded a little bit, we could like go over there and see those things.
I've slowly but surely been broadening my horizons and what to expect. Like I've started the Power by the Apocalypse system. I've done some like games that have just like 7 lines and they just like, this is a horrible game, and I'm like, I'm gonna try to make it cool. Okay, like I've been trying to break this mold of just like, if it's wizards, that's it. It's by the Bible. That's all I got. You know, I want to break that mold. I want to look at other perspectives. I want to be wrong about things. Like maybe I shouldn't be ruling it this way. Maybe this other game can give me some other insight into what I can do better. And that's what I'm excited to see, especially with a lot of people coming into the space, bringing their voices, bringing their ideas. It's just only going to get better with more perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for the kind of like new generation, I guess, in quotations, of like of players who are coming in, it's sort of like they just have a different, because also I think when you play so much D&D, like your way of problem solving is directly linked to the game.
Like
and
fighting.
So yeah, I love playing with people who are new to the game because they do things or they attempt to do things that are so out of the box that it's like I want to then mold the system around them instead of the other way around, because I'm like, no, that would be super cool, like let's do that.
I always try to give my players inspiration when they bring up an idea that's like I would have never thought of that, and I want you to keep thinking that way. Here's the little cookie, keep doing that, giving a Pavlovic response to just circumventing my whole thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's so, I mean, this game, to me, it's been very eye-opening to see different perspectives and different ideas, especially because at the beginning of COVID, I was like, I want to get better at DMing, so I'm just going to go onto Roll20 and figure things out. And the people that I finally put together are just all around the US, just because of timing-wise. But like I'm from Texas, one guy's from California, some girls from Washington, another guy's in Florida, just spread out. I don't know how we got a scheduling thing working with that in mind, but we did it, and just like their experiences, what they're going through, and then just like slowly but surely I get to know them, and like someone's doing movies, one's a teacher, another guy's just doing IT, and one of them's like just starting into college. So it's all very interesting stuff of getting new perspectives and ideas. Do you feel like through this ask for people to invite, do you feel like your point of view, either within TTRPGs or culture, has expanded from it?
Absolutely. I mean, like, I tell people all the time, I didn't do a ton of writing for the book itself because I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to do as much writing as they wanted to. So there's just kind of like there's a small section of the book that's my writing. But a lot of people are like, well, if you didn't do writing, then like, what were you doing? And my job mainly was, I was directing. So I was putting everybody together, putting all the assets together, et cetera, et cetera. But I also had to be awake at, 4 a.m. because it's 4 p.m. in the Philippines, so that I could cover certain subjects with people that just weren't. It was a sort of thing where you had to like sit down and talk about it.
Right.
Because trying to explain it any other way is like, it's not going to get there. And that to me was like, I tell people all the time, like, my sleep schedule will never be the same because of that. But I really wouldn't trade that experience for anything. Because, I mean, those were the moments where I was learning just like such a different way of understanding things and looking at things, especially with a lot of them living in the Philippines right now. Just the difference in culture and the difference in, I hate to say work ethic because I feel like people kind of, like, I'm not trying to sound like an old capitalist or whatever, but there's like a different understood kind of cultural respect, I think, that is kind of ingrained in like Filipino culture, because you have such a respect for your elders, respect for your community, that's kind of like taught to you because you're Filipino, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to make it make sense for people who didn't really grow up in the same environment. But I think for me, working with people who have that same sort of mentality of, I'm younger than a lot of them, but they would still call me Po, or they would call me Ate. And, similarly, like, we'd all kind of address each other to what America's standards would be, like, very formally. But it's really not formal for us. It's just kind of like an understood, respectful language of the language, I guess. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, my husband is American. He's very, very white. Bless him. But he kind of had to learn like all of that when we started first dating. And when I started working on the book and I was just talking about it, he was kind of he kind of explained it while we were talking about it, of it's not necessarily that people that I've worked with like in America are disrespectful. It's just more of the culture around respect itself is different for Filipinos. So I just, working with people, especially in the Philippines, is such a different vibe, I guess, than working with people here. Because it's very casual most of the time here, of like, hey, buddy, you know, yada yada. And then you kind of like sign off the email with like cheers or, you know, whatever. Whereas like the language around working with other Filipinos was like, this is what it was like when I would go to my grandma's house, you know. So I really appreciate that.
She likes being the boss. Is you like the reverence that comes with being the boss. So
there's, yeah, I mean, well, you know, there's always some of that, I think. But also like being a young person of color who is also presents as a woman in America, there's so much that comes with that when you're trying to work professionally, especially when I tell people I'm married and then all of a sudden they don't want to work with me anymore.
I love working. I love being in the workforce, and I can only imagine it's just as good everywhere else.
Yeah. So with, I won't say that the Philippines has like the best view when it comes to women sometimes, but the people that I worked with, like there's also some difference to that. But also like when you're a person of color and you're working with other people of your same heritage, but they don't live in America, then like to them saying like person of color is kind of weird, because they're like, well, everybody here is brown, you know. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's a weird sort of thing that comes with it in America that they just don't really have in the Philippines. And also there's some kinship, I suppose, with everybody being Filipino. So yeah. Being able to work in that environment, like that was great. I really wouldn't trade that for anything.
It seems like it was a bit like eye-opening and understanding, and just a bit of a kind of shift from what you were used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad, you know, the book is out. Everything's golden. On to the next thing.
Yeah, and we didn't even like talk about that. Once again, Lucia's overachieving, and that the Indiegogo that it was first posted on beat its ask. So, I mean, I just quickly looked it up, and like 137% of your goal is nothing to scoff at, my love.
That's wild. Especially being on Indiegogo, which for anybody out there who's listening who wants real advice from like somebody who's done it before, use literally any other platform to crowdfund. Do not use Indiegogo. I'm sorry also to anybody from Indiegogo who might ever hear this, but your platform, y'all gotta fix some stuff. It's
y'all
not,
gotta get it together.
Y'all gotta get something put together.
You know what it is. There's hundreds of complaints. You've seen them.
Tell people all the time I'm super grateful that the Indiegogo was more successful than like we were even hoping. Mm-hmm. But then I'm also like, man, if I would have put it on like Kickstarter, I would have had so much more budget to have been able to work with.
No.
Because and I tell people that, and they're like, "Oh, well, you just want to make more money or whatever," and it's like, well, yeah, because like I need to eat and live, but also like I want to pay my people good rates and like make sure that they're also fed. So that's my other biggest advice: is if you're doing anything, for the love of whatever you believe in, don't do it on Indiegogo.
Do it not there.
Anywhere else.
All right, we've hit the hour mark. Alex, any more questions?
No. Thank you, Lucia, like, for sharing everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Adrian, do you have any other questions?
No, I mean, I do.
You see that?
But it's like, man, I just feel another 30 minutes.
Oh no, I guess she has to come back with her next project.
I can certainly do that.
It sounds like a plan. Yeah, where can they find you, Lucia?
You can find me basically all over, everywhere as Seersword. My last name, Versprilli, is really hard to spell. So Seersword works. The main one that I post on is Twitter, because I don't understand Instagram anymore. I feel like an old lady. So Seersword on Twitter, or seersword.com. That's my website. I sell stuff there. So if you want to spend money on stuff from my shop, seersword.com. That's me.
Also, go grab her book. It's really not that expensive. Like, what do you need? You don't need another meal. You can absolutely go support. Please.
You read.
Eat after you read. Listen. After you read. That's what's important. And then thank you, dear listener, for joining us for another episode of Dungeons and Degrees. We stuck to the script this time, guys. I'm proud of us. You can continue to join anything we're doing on any of our social medias. Adrian and I have been streaming on the Twitch, which is a riot and a hoot. So if you want to continue to watch us just not yell at each other and play puzzle games, our Twitch is a good job of doing that. We're also still growing that Discord server, so you can always join us if you need another Dungeons and Dragons Discord server to be on. I can tell you, my Discord is all muted. I'm muting everything because I'm overwhelmed with how many new communities I'm obsessed. It's fine. If you enjoy this podcast, please go rate us 5 stars on whatever the podcast rating system you use. Be sure to share our show with your friends, family, enemies, lovers, lovers to enemies, enemies to lovers. I don't care. Share it. Otherwise, you will always find yourself at the pointy end of a mermaid. What end is the pointy end? Sure. Also, if that's not enough and you said, Alex, I need more, well, dear listener, I've got more for you. If you want to support small businesses in this day and age, who doesn't want to support small businesses? And really business, I mean podcast. And by podcast, I mean Dungeons and Degrees, where you can find us at patreon.com/Dungeons and Degrees. You too can become one of the fine patrons, just like Melissa, Skylar, Megan, Alex, Wani, Lucy, Guy, and Paige, the love of my life, the sun and stars. You too can help us. We're also recording this at the end of the month with 8 patrons. We're going to donate $8 whole. I'm going to throw in more money to a charity of our choice. Since it is June, it is June 27th. It's probably going to be something to fuck up this whole goddamn situation we've got going on. Just so you know, right now.
Fuck us, right?
Fuck these bitches.
God damn it. How are you gonna keep going back in time? We gotta keep going forward, Stab. Anyways.
It's fine.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's fine for now, right?
It's fine for now.
It's not
Right.
even fine now. Thank you so much for listening. My name's Adrian.
And I'm Alex.
Oh, and I've been Lucia. Thank you for having me.
Go have some fun.
Do 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 do.